Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Doing a video today in the, La Paz region of the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. And I just wanted to show kind of the spectacular scenery and what kind of grows in this region. We're near the Balandra Beach area, which is a fairly popular area, but this is a bit of an out-of-the-way spot. I just want to show kind of the barren and stark terrain that also is quite spectacular, as there's a lot of cacti. You can see up here on this little headland there is prickly pear and looks like organ pipe cacti, maybe even a saguaro there. So very dry zone. Here we also have a heron that is resting in the shade. It's quite warm today. So we're just going to do a video here showing a little bit about what grows in this area. We have some mangroves and a fairly deserted beach area. The main beach area is behind me. This is I'm just waiting out in the bay here, and I'm gonna cross to this other area and we'll have a look and see what's going on there. All right, here we are at a little spot of mangrove, and it looks like two different type of mangrove. I'm not really familiar with this type here. And this is kind of the traditional mangrove of the western part of Mexico and down into Central America. Growing essentially all in saltwater. There's not a lot of freshwater influence here. As you can see, very dry, rocky headland here above it, and nothing but saltwater to sustain it, essentially. So we have a bit of a sand mud bottom, and I see a lot of little fish and these types of things moving around on the bottom, but just kind of interesting to see exactly from this perspective what it looks like on this side. Usually I don't necessarily see it from the water side, where it's very easy to access. So this is kind of a neat area that way. And we have all these prop roots kind of growing out as this little patch of mangroves expands. And of course, the barnacles and the things like that growing on the roots that are submerged through most of the day. We're at low tide, or lowish tide at the moment. So this would get a little bit deeper, but the water's, where I'm standing, waist deep, that kind of thing. And there's like I said, a lot of little fish, a lot of jellyfish that I've walked through that have a bit of a sting to them, but nothing too drastic. But just a really interesting look at the mangroves from the ocean side. And as you can see, this isn't a very large patch. This is a pretty small patch of mangrove just on this rocky headland, and it looks to be expanding, which is a good thing. These mangroves are extremely important for small fish and these types of things, as breeding areas and as nurseries for the small fish, protection from the larger predators, that type of thing. So we're gonna go over onto this side here and have a look over there next. All right, so we're looking back here at the mangroves we were just looking at. We just crossed this little channel here. It's a little bit deeper than the rest of it, but made it across. And we have this whole side and beach to ourselves, except for this friendly little gull here. What an amazing place. You can see back through the bay there, where the boats are anchored. That's kind of the main beach area where a lot of people hang out and whatnot. But yeah, so we have this whole area to ourselves. We can have a look and kind of see what kind of things are kind of in these sandy, you know, I guess kind of dune environments, right? We have a fair amount of dune plants and grasses here that would be just above the high tide line. This one's a little bit unique. I'm not entirely sure what that is. It's some sort of grass, and it seems to be all over the place. And there's a few kind of succulents here in the sand. Pretty amazing, you know, survivors in this really salty, dry environment. You know, these plants just kind of keep on going here. And this is a group of mangroves here. We're going to go around the other side and take a little bit of a closer look at what's going on with them. Okay, before we head into the mangroves here, I just want to point out, if you see the ground ahead of me appears to be kind of moving, there are a lot of little crabs here. Kind of fascinating how many there are. Thousands just crawling, and you see these almost little pellets around these holes. That's their excavations. As the tide goes down, they push all the sand that washes in out in these little pellets. And right now, where the tide is fairly low, they're out exploring. It looks like a little bit bigger crab lives in this one, but these guys are a little bit hard to film. They sneak into their holes pretty quick when you approach, but they're maybe half an inch long, you know, 10-12 millimeters long, that kind of thing. So very small, but many, as you can see. But the stunning thing here, against the arid mountains and hills and the green mangroves, this clear blue water and the white sand, it's just amazing. So one of those things that if you're in the area, highly recommend coming here. You don't necessarily have to stay at the busy side of the beach. You can just walk across pretty easily. You know, you might have to accept a few jellyfish stings. Other than that, pretty easy walk, and you get to explore this whole mangrove and just this kind of paradise here all on your own. It's really quite amazing. So yeah, we're just gonna continue down here to some of these mangroves and just see what we can see. All right, something I just want to point out here, we're underneath this type of mangrove here, and you can see there's these little kind of lumps that are coming out of the sand. Those are part of the root system, and as the water recedes, it's part of how the roots get oxygen, I believe. So just kind of this, not all mangroves have these types of things, but this type appears to. And this, like I said, is a different kind that I'm used to seeing. It looks more shrub-like to me than a traditional mangrove. So I will try to find out exactly what type this is. It almost looks like they are near flower or near flowering. And you can see there's like some seed pods here. And yeah, so I'll try to find out a little bit more, and I'll put it in the comments here, or in the video. Just a really interesting bush here. So yeah, we'll continue on to the kind of the main area down here and see what we can find. Okay, so this is an area here where these roots are a little more well developed. They're coming up maybe up to, 25, 30 centimeters, 12, 14 inches, that kind of thing, up from the sand. So they're able to really get above that tide line, access the oxygen in the air out of that kind of oxygen poor sand and mud. Just really interesting. They do extend out quite a ways, and you can see coming out from the trees, you know, maybe 3, 4, 5 meters, 15, 20 feet, that kind of thing. So yeah, just really interesting. There's a resident gull, and I just want to say I do apologize for the wind. It is a little bit windy, but you know, we're in the water, so it's hard to prevent. But anyway, we'll continue exploring here. All right, so just want to point out kind of some younger mangroves, the next generation here, as this patch going forward here that we're going to be looking into kind of is extending down towards the end of this point that we're on, and it's you see a lot of these young mangroves popping up here, which is a great sign that these are kind of extending their range down here. We have alongside on the inland side of the mangroves, like we had mentioned before, there's these succulents, a couple of different kinds, I believe. This particular one really kind of spreads, little really nice little flower there. Not sure of the species. Again, you can see it's crawling with these little crabs as well. It's a little bit weird to be walking around in, but it's that's nature, right? So yeah, and again, the little mangroves here, you can see this is a very new one, just kind of coming on and extending their way down through the end here of this little peninsula, which is fantastic to see. And as we look inland here at what's growing in kind of this dune environment, more of the succulents and some, looks like kind of a succulent shrub of some type here, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. We'll get a closer look here. Right here, it's got very thick leaves, as we can see here, clearly adapted to a dry environment and obviously salty. Drifts at the high tide line of mangrove leaves, which would kind of enrich the very nutrient poor environment that this sand would really be. So as waves and these types of things come up, they bunch up, eventually would rot and help all these little plants grow. But not much land here, very flat, potentially be inundated at times with storms and whatnot. But like I say, this is the Sea of Cortez, and within a larger bay within the Sea of Cortez. So I don't think that it would get that type of hurricane damage and that type of thing that the west coast of the peninsula and even the west coast of the mainland would also get, as storms passed over and then regained strength over the Sea of Cortez. They would, you know, clearly do a lot more damage on those western sides facing the Pacific. So anyway, we'll move on and go in and see what else we can see. Something I came across here in the sand, the Western Pacific isn't really known for a lot of coral growth, but I just wanted to point out here, I just pulled it out of the sand and I'll put it right back when we're done. But here's an old coral skeleton of clearly a fairly, you know, well-developed Acropora species. So it's kind of nice to see. I haven't seen a lot of coral growth in the area, but I believe there is a reef, and one of the few on the west coast of Mexico in the area. So obviously there's a little bit of coral growth here, but just kind of nice to see. I have not seen a lot, but we'll look for more. All right, just to point out some of the variety of life in the marine environment here, we see a lot of large marine snails, snail shells. As you can see, this one is quite large. This is a really interesting one as well. All just sitting right here among some coral debris as well. But just the sheer amount of large marine snails and or shells, I should say, is really interesting here. Clams, razor clams, all sorts of things. So clearly quite a rich marine environment here, just from the debris I'm seeing washed up on the shore. Usually you think of the eastern Pacific and that region as being much less biodiverse than the western Pacific, which is true, but no less spectacular. Just the kind of reflective material on this oyster or clam, just amazing. So anyway, just wanted to point out just how diverse this area appears to be, and there's just so much to see. So we'll keep on exploring. Okay, we're near the end of this little bay here, and I just want to point out just the incredible amount of wildlife that's, I guess, kind of made possible by these mangroves that are here. Unfortunately, throughout the world, the mangroves occupy kind of desirable areas along the coastlines and are often removed. So these mangroves, what I've seen here, it's really hard to show on video, but just thousands upon thousands of small fish in and around the roots, birds roosting in them, all types, everything from herons to birds of prey, to all sorts of things like that. And I really believe that this environment would be a lot more barren with a lot less diversity if these trees weren't here. So I just want to really point out the importance of ecosystems like this, where these mangroves, the dune environments and these types of things, there's plenty of lizards and everything else that are living in them that, if they're destroyed, if everything is made a resort or a public beach and these types of things, that we're just going to be missing. So just such an amazing area, and just really want to emphasize how much I would recommend coming to an area like this. If you're in the La Paz area, it's just an incredible place. So I'll end the video there, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.